Hi, this is Omonike Akinyemi, and I am so happy to discuss um, the different artists that we were exposed to in this module. For me, the artists that really had an impact on what I see as my own practice are Neri Oxman as well as Wayne McGregor. For Nori Oxman, I was really intrigued by her idea that wearing art can be possible, that you can wear your art and that your art can literally nourish you, that the artwork can be responsive to your own neurological sensitivities, your digestive tract, all of those different biological needs that we have are responded to and responsive to our own being. I actually thought it was reminiscent of African traditions that I've been exposed to, the spirituality that often medicine men and women have in their own practice. In Yoruba belief systems in West Africa, there is a practice of shamans and medicine men and priestesses wearing potions, wearing different things on their body that come from nature. It might be something from an animal. It might be something of a leaf. It might be something of raffia, bits of hay that are woven onto what they're wearing. And it reminded me of that. That spirituality tells us that those wearable objects that we place on our body actually can keep us from illness and prevent us from catching the evil eye or something that might not be good for us. So I thought in some way she was kind of tapping into an ancient art, an ancient truth, an idea that what we wear can actually sustain us with life, which has existed and stems from our African traditions. You know, it really brought to me the idea of amplifying a little bit. I'm doing a story on the Chevalier de Saint George. It's a series of ballets about his life. He was a black man of French and African descent who was born and raised in the West Indies and then moved to Paris. And when he returns to the West Indies as an older man, he comes back, at least in my depiction, in my ballet, he comes back to his home ground and really finds himself again with his own people. And one idea that I'm drawing from Nori Oxman's work is that perhaps he can, in an initiation into the African rituals, perhaps in his Vodun initiation, begin to wear a wearable coat of arms that consists of parts of nature, that might consist of leaves and twigs that are placed on his coat, that his people give him to help him gain spiritual strength in his journey back to Paris, as well as his journey forming his new army. And the army that St. George founds is the first army of men of color who fight in the French Revolution and become known as the Légion Saint George. So this idea of having this wearable coat of arms, you know, which is made out of nature and very different from the classical, you know, French scarf and what we've seen of the pictures of St. George, to me is very interesting. I also take from Nori Oxman's work something that I am trying to do with my own environment. I have a dance studio that I have been in renovation for, and it has a courtyard attached to it. And I'm beginning to see that there may be a merit in marrying a little bit the courtyard with the studio and allowing that space to have an in and outside feeling where you can go from one part of the space to another and never really quite closing it off from the outside world. That can be a little hard. Obviously, in upstate New York, it gets cold and it snows, but it could also bring a little bit more truth to what we're doing. I was teaching a gram class just this morning, and I asked the kids when they got up to high presentation to sing, ah, and how interesting would that be for them to be able to experience that type of vocalization where it doesn't just stop right here at the door. It goes beyond them to the birds and the trees and the flowers in the courtyard, and maybe even to the neighbors. So that's an exciting idea that I'm also pulling from Neri's work. Not only in amplifying the idea of the Chevalier having a coat made of nature through his initiation in the African rituals, but also in transforming my working space. Right now I'm in a space outdoors, and I definitely feel the presence of the insects, the animals, but it's kind of interesting to depart from always being sheltered. From Wayne McGregor's work, Wayne McGregor, very interesting choreographer who I liked hearing him scat. What I felt really worked for me was hearing him scat rhythm. Really get into rhythm in an unabashed kind of way. And I felt that was the most magical thing about his work with the two dancers in the TEDx clip. I did like how they were responsive to him, but for me it went a little bit too quickly. I'd like to bring into my work this idea of scatting, which I already do with a lot of my choreography with the young people I work with, but also with it being something that happens a little bit more to a rhythm that we're finding ourselves. Because I find when I begin to vocalize and scat, really want to see where it's going with the people I am teaching or working with. And if they are getting into it, moving into that zone where choreography can happen and it becomes a kind of, jam session with one person responding to the other. So Wayne McGregor and his interplay with vocals was what worked most for me. I thought both of these artists were really extraordinary. They both had a spirit of mind that you could tell was about more than just movement or art or design. And I think mostly that's what I will take from both of them. The idea that these moves, the space that we're in, does not necessarily have to be the structured spaces we've been told it is. That the dance studio becomes the studio where you are, and where you are must also incorporate ideas about nature, the lived environment, and how we as humans are breathing in that environment. Thank you.